Hello, everyone. My name is Aaron Murray, and I am the Director of Customer Engagement and Training here at Ken Cook Company. We are asked by many of our companies that we work with that are in the heavy equipment, automotive, and marine industry to come out and help evaluate training and training material and how we can actually help and assist in dissecting it and putting together a better training strategy for most users. So we've been asked by a little over 20 companies to come out and do a full evaluation. And from that evaluations that we've done, we kind of see the same result almost every single time. The nice thing is a lot of companies are changing now, but this kind of gives a basic idea of what we've done. So the average classroom is normally split up into these different areas when it comes to things like technical training. So when we see the current classroom is roughly about 70% spent in a lecture style environment where a student is sitting, listening, maybe asking a couple questions where there's somebody up there standing with a PowerPoint lecturing them about this information and what's going on. About 5% of that time is actually spent taking things like note taking, maybe some questions that are answered, like a testing, things like that. And then about 25% of it is actually spent in the actual time where people are getting their hands dirty or doing the actual pieces of interactivity on the things they're going to need to know how to do. And to be honest, that goes a little more deeper in that. I want to talk a little bit more about that in the future, but this kind of gives a base level idea. So that 25% is a little bit of a not necessarily 100% true. So let's talk about how people retain their information. So after 2 weeks of somebody going through the average classroom, what did they actually retain or what did they actually gain from that information? So after about 2 weeks, if a person read a basic piece of material, maybe about 10% of that is retained. And if they heard somebody, so again, somebody giving the lecture, they're listening, right? They're retaining maybe about 20% of that. If somebody's seeing it, so again, they're looking at the presentation, they're hearing it, that's good. That's about 50%. Now, about 30%, and about 50% is when they see and hear it together. So live demonstration, seeing things like a movie, what's actually happening, that has the highest level of retention in that passive kind of way of learning. But if you see here down at the bottom, we also have this active area, which is where people really learn the most. So 70% is where you see things like you say, and where they actually are giving the presentation themselves. So I, as the instructor, am learning more than anybody else in that group when I give that information and disseminate to other people. But 90% is where a person does, where they're actually doing the information, simulating the real life experience or doing the real thing. So why would we build our classroom to be broken up like this, where 70% of that retention at a best case scenario is at 50% retention after 2 weeks, and 25% of it, if you're lucky and done it correctly, it's going to be at 90%. Now, here's the part I was talking about essentially, is that 90% is at that highest level. But what we saw actually in the classrooms is when they actually spent on each individual user that able to hit that 90 level percent is really only about 3 to 8% of the time of their classroom experience, because sometimes only one or two people can be doing the actual project at a time and other people are standing around watching. So again, those people that are observing are gaining at a best case scenario of 50% of what's actually happening there from a retention standpoint after 2 weeks. So how do we change this? Why would we spend or send some people out, fly them out to a location, send them out for a week where they have to pay for food, you have to pay for all this, the information, and at best case scenario, they're retaining, if you're lucky, after 2 weeks, 50% at a best case scenario. Well, let's actually see what happens actually after a longer period of time than 2 weeks. So what we've done with some of our customers, we asked after 6 months after retaining the class and seeing the class and evaluating it, what did they actually gain, or how do they actually recall when they get back on the job? And we go out and we talk to these people, and they're saying, you know what, the way I'm, sometimes they're really lucky and they have somebody they can go and ask for help. They've got another technician that's been there for 20 years and they're giving them that information, which is great. But not all of them have that ability. Some of them are smaller shops and things like that, don't have that. Maybe they're the only technician altogether when they have to learn that. A lot of times they have also outdated reference manuals. So they'll go over and grab a manual and they'll look and flip through it and try to get that information. And if they're lucky, they can find what they're looking for and get that and fix that out. But sometimes those books are a little bit dirty because they've been beaten up and so around. And sometimes they're even hard to find, just as trying to locate them to begin with. But we actually see the biggest way that people are finding the answers is actually a little scary, but also makes sense. People are searching Google and YouTube. They're going to Google and saying, how do I fix this specific timing belt? How do I fix this specific thing? How do I replace this specific function if they don't know how to do it? And there's good and bad to that. The good is that people want to try to find the answer. The bad is you don't know who's giving out that answer. If you're a company that spent a lot of time and money into putting out high quality content and DIY strategy for the public to see and get access to, that's great. The Google strategy is probably working really well for you, and YouTube is probably working really well for you. But most companies out there are not. They're normally keeping a little more enclosed. They don't want to share it out to the public. They want to very much keep it available or for purchase even, as an example. So if you look at that, you're kind of trusting whoever has the best SEO to give the answers to your technicians. So Bubba Smith down the road, who's got a great YouTube channel that talks about how to fix all different things and manufacture, possibly how to change a truck into something else or do a different weird thing, they may be the number one thing that gets hit on there. So they go and see that. And if Bubba Smith is not following all the safety rules, may not be maybe helping people avoid warranty, may not be the best way to overall do it, you're kind of trusting that person to put that out there. Now, you also may be very lucky and somebody out there is doing a great job of doing that. But again, you're now putting that trust into somebody else outside of your own company. So what do you do to resolve this issue? So one of the things we talk about doing is take away that original strategy of that 75-25% rule, and let's change it into more of a blended approach. Essentially, let's take that watch, read, listen, play interactivity and build it into really a true blended strategy. Now, the way we look at it is how do people need to disseminate and find their information, as we saw by asking the technicians out in the field, they're using their phone most of the time. Sometimes they're using a computer, but most of the time they're using their phone that's in their pocket. So what we can tell them to do is build out from a mobile first strategy. Let's actually say, let's build it for those people that want to find the answers where they want to find it so they can get it the way that they need it just in time. So now that they're back in the field, you can now have it so that the person can utilize their mobile device or any other device on top of that to be able to find and reference the material they need to get the proper answer. That way they'll avoid warranty, they're not hurting themselves possibly or hurting anything on the equipment itself. So that blended classroom kind of does change things a little bit. Is we use things like RFIDs or things like QR codes or even things like beacons that can display or put out the information when you need it, as you need it. What we're talking about doing is also changing the way that the facilitator engages with the users as well. And the way you can do that is, but with this mobile first strategy, is really have that mobile device available so they can use it, allow them to put their information or pull up the information that you display or build out so that it shows up when they need it. Now, if you don't want everything to be available on that mobile device, at least teach them how to find that answer when they need it at that time. So really the facilitator that's been doing this for maybe 15, 20 years now can really become a true person that can actually really walk them through and guide them through, as opposed to somebody just getting a lecture most of the time. They can actually spend more time with those people that need more time. Now, what you've done here is a couple different things. You can now have the technician that's been doing this for 20 years, and he's got to learn all the new things for your specific OEM equipment. But, because he came over from a competitor's piece of equipment, he's now coming over to yours, he's got to recertify. You can now basically give him the guidance or her the guidance to find the answers when they need it, as they need it, as they go through it. And in fact, they may already know most of the answers, but there may be a slight nuance or a slight difference of your type of equipment versus somebody else's. But it also allows that same classroom to have a brand new 18-year-old that just came out of high school or college that is now going through the same kind of course that's never done any of this stuff before. And they get to learn at their own pace based on that grouping. So in a week's classroom that you put out there, you can have somebody that's been a high-level technician go through and experience the full gambit of what they need to know and get that certification to a higher and a faster level. And then giving the guidance to that younger person that same 5 days, but not slowing the person down that's been doing it for 25 years or 20 years. And now the facilitator really is walking them through when they need an answer. So some of the things we talk about doing is integrating things like a hold up your hand kind of strategy, where you hit a button on the app and it would automatically let the teacher know, hey, I need some assistance or help. And that person can now really be more of that guide that walks them through those specific areas. So the nice thing about this is now if you see here, everybody's learning as they're doing in those specific areas. So everybody can still go through the entire classroom if they want, but they're learning maybe about the rear engine first, or maybe they're learning about the front of the boat. In this case, as an example, they're learning about different pieces, but at different times. And you can use things like geolocation, beacons, RFIDs to kind of trigger that information on how you actually execute it and do it. Really changing the classroom more into that true digital style strategy. But the best thing at it is if you give them this information, build it out in this way, and constantly update it, you're now able to reach these people as they go back out in the field. And they're going to be able to get the answers as they need it when they truly need it, just in time. There's tons of other ways we can look at doing this, but this kind of gives you a high-level overview. If you'd like more information about this and how we can do this and how we can help you do this, or how other companies can do this as well, please feel free to reach out. My name is Aaron Murray, again, the Director of Customer Engagement and Training at Ken Cook Company, and you can reach me at aaronm@kencook.com, or again, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. Please feel free to follow me or communicate with me there. I'd love to just simply answer some questions for you. Thank you for your time.